Everyone in Burlington, Vermont thought they knew what happened to Emily and Ethan Collins on that snowy December evening in 1989. A predator, a stranger, someone who saw two children alone during the Christmas rush and seized an opportunity. For 19 years, their mother Jennifer lived with that nightmare, imagining the worst possible fates for her babies. The police investigated every registered sex offender within 100 miles. Volunteers searched frozen lakes and dense forests until their fingers went numb. The FBI built profiles of potential kidnappers. But nobody, not the detectives, not the neighbors, not even Jennifer herself, suspected the truth. Because the person who took Emily and Ethan wasn't a stranger at all, and the children weren't dead. They were living just 2,000 miles away, in a place where no one would ever think to look, raised by someone they'd been taught to trust. When the truth finally surfaced in 2008, it would shatter everything Burlington thought it understood about that Christmas Eve tragedy. The last normal moment of Jennifer Collins's life occurred at 4:47 p.m. on December 23, 1989, when she walked through the glass doors of the Church Street Marketplace in downtown Burlington. The shopping district glittered with holiday lights, and Bing Crosby's White Christmas drifted from storefront speakers. Jennifer had $73, her last paycheck before holiday break, and a mental list: new mittens for Ethan, whose old ones had holes, a Nancy Drew book for Emily, who'd devoured the entire series and kept leaving notes asking for more mysteries, and something for her estranged husband, Michael, that wouldn't suggest she still cared. That morning, she'd watched her children eat breakfast. Emily had been reading at the table, always reading, her long brown hair hiding the braces she was self-conscious about. She'd looked up and caught Jennifer staring. "What, Mom? Do I have food in my teeth?" Ethan had laughed, spraying milk, and Emily had ruffled his blonde hair the way she always did, the protective big sister. He'd climbed into Jennifer's lap and wrapped his arms around her neck. "I love you bigger than the whole world," he'd whispered, their private phrase he'd invented at 3 and said every single day. She'd left the kids with Michael. The arrangement felt strange after 6 months of separation, but their lawyer insisted on civility for the custody hearing scheduled January 14th. Michael had moved to his brother's apartment but came by 3 evenings weekly for family time. He'd been different with the children lately, transformed. The distant father had become intensely present, almost obsessive. He'd started reading to both kids every visit, taking hundreds of Polaroids of ordinary moments. "I'm making memories," he'd said when Jennifer asked, "making sure I remember every detail." The lawyer said it would look good for custody, proof he was engaged. The shopping took longer than expected. Stores were packed, lines stretched down blocks. By the time Jennifer paid for everything, snow was falling in thick flakes. She checked her watch. 6:23 p.m. Almost 2 hours gone. Michael would be irritated, but the kids would be fine, probably watching A Christmas Story wrapped in blankets while Michael made hot chocolate. The drive home took 12 minutes through neighborhoods blazing with Christmas lights. The Collins house sat dark except the porch light. Jennifer frowned. Michael usually turned on every light, but maybe he'd taken the kids for a walk. She pushed through the front door. "Hello, Michael? Kids?" The silence felt wrong immediately. Not quiet, but empty. Jennifer moved through the living room, boots squeaking on hardwood. TV off. No blankets on the couch. No mugs on the coffee table. "Emily? Ethan?" Kitchen. 4 plates on the counter. Dinner preparations started. Stove cold. Ground beef thawing in the sink. She opened the refrigerator out of habit, then felt stupid. Her heart began racing. She took the stairs 2 at a time. Emily's room, empty, bed made, stuffed animals on the pillow. Ethan's room, empty, Toys scattered mid-game. Bathroom, empty, damp from a recent shower. Downstairs, she noticed the back door standing slightly ajar. Cold air whispered through. Snow had blown in, creating a small drift on linoleum. She stepped onto the back porch. The yard stretched dark, bare trees skeletal against the sky. In the snow, clear as photographs, small footprints leading from porch to gate. Child-sized prints, 2 sets, hurried. Beside them, larger adult prints, all heading toward the alley. Jennifer ran inside, grabbed the phone, called Michael's brother's apartment, answering machine, called her neighbor Barbara Harrison. "Have you seen my kids?" "No, honey. Why? What's wrong?" "They're not here. Michael was watching them, and now they're gone." Jennifer's voice cracked. "Can you come over?" Barbara arrived within minutes. They searched together, closets, under beds, anywhere frightened children might hide. Nothing, no note, no signs of struggle, just the open door and those footprints disappearing. At 7:02 p.m., Jennifer called Burlington police. Officer Mitchell arrived at 7:18, pulled out his notebook. He listened to Jennifer's explanation, studied the footprints with his flashlight, snow already obscuring them. "Mrs. Collins, your husband was supposed to be watching the children. Where is he?" "I don't know. I've been calling." "You're separated? Going through a divorce?" Jennifer felt cold settle in her stomach. "Yes, but Michael wouldn't. He loves those kids." Mitchell's expression stayed neutral. "I'm calling this in. In custody disputes, we often find—" "This isn't a custody dispute. Someone took my children." By 8 p.m., 4 patrol cars lined the street, blue lights painting snow. Detective Brad Sullivan took control. Lean, graying hair, 23 years on the force. He'd worked missing children before. He understood the statistics. The first 3 hours were everything. Sullivan interviewed Jennifer while technicians photographed the back door, took molds of footprints before snow buried them. She told him everything: the separation, custody battle, Michael's recent behavior, his scheduled visits. Sullivan took notes, underlining certain words. "Has your husband made any threats? Anything suggesting he might take the children?" "No, never. He's controlling, methodical. But he grew up in foster care, 9 different homes. He once told me the only thing that terrified him was losing family. When I filed for divorce, he didn't argue, but when I said I wanted primary custody, something changed. He said, 'You can leave me, Jennifer, but you won't take my children. They're the only real family I've ever had.' I thought he meant court. I didn't think—" Her voice broke. "Sometimes parents who feel they're losing control do exactly that, Mrs. Collins." At 8:34 p.m., officers found Michael's brother Greg at a Christmas party in Winooski. Greg said Michael had been staying at his apartment but hadn't seen him since morning. "He said he was spending the day with the kids. I figured he'd be at the house." Sullivan turned to his partner. "Put out an APB for Michael Collins. White male, 37, 6'1", 190, possibly with 2 children." By 10 p.m., police checked bus stations, train stations, the airport. They contacted state police. Every cop in Chittenden County had descriptions. Emily, 4'7", with long brown hair and green eyes, red sweater and jeans. Ethan, 3'6", with blonde hair and blue eyes, dinosaur shirt and corduroys. At 11:47 p.m., Sullivan returned. "We found Michael Collins." Jennifer stood fast. "Where? Are the kids with him?" "He's at his brother's apartment. The kids aren't there." Sullivan's face stayed blank. "He claims he never saw them today. Says he called you around 3 to cancel because he wasn't feeling well, and you said fine." "That's a lie. He never called. I spoke to him yesterday. He confirmed 4 o'clock. He also says you've been unstable lately, erratic. He's concerned you might have done something and are trying to blame him." The room tilted. "What?" "I have to ask, is there any chance you could have hurt your children? Sometimes under tremendous stress—" "Get out." Jennifer's voice was barely above a whisper. Barbara stepped forward. "Detective, Jennifer would never hurt those kids. I've known her 8 years. Most devoted mother I've ever seen." Sullivan raised his hands. "I understand, but we have to examine all angles. Mr. Collins agreed to a polygraph. Mrs. Collins, I need you to do the same." The polygraph happened at 2:30 a.m. December 24th at Burlington Police. Jennifer sat in a gray room while a technician attached sensors. Sullivan asked baseline questions, name, address, date, then critical ones. "Did you harm your children?" "No." "Do you know where Emily and Ethan are?" "No." After 37 minutes, the technician whispered to Sullivan. The detective turned to Jennifer. "You're not showing deception. You can go home." "What about Michael?" Sullivan hesitated. "Mr. Collins completed his test at 10:30 last night. He also showed no signs of deception." If Michael hadn't taken them, if she hadn't taken them, then who had? Christmas Eve dawned gray and cold over Burlington. More than 200 volunteers gathered at 6 a.m., bundled in winter coats. Detective Sullivan organized them into search teams covering a 5-mile radius, parks, abandoned buildings, wooded areas. Jennifer joined a team with Barbara Harrison and other mothers from Emily's school. They walked through familiar streets, calling the children's names until their voices went hoarse. Neighbors emerged to help, their faces pinched with cold and concern. Everyone had theories whispered in hushed tones. A vagrant, a desperate childless couple, someone from the state hospital. Nobody wanted to say the darkest possibility. Burlington was a small city of 40,000, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. 2 children couldn't just vanish without a witness. By noon, the search had produced nothing. No clothing, no new footprints, no witnesses. Emily and Ethan had simply disappeared into winter air. At 2 p.m., Detective Sullivan held a press conference on City Hall steps. Jennifer stood beside him, holding school photos of her children. She spoke through tears, begging for their return. The footage aired on every local news broadcast that evening. Christmas Day brought 47 tips to the hotline, all dead ends. A waitress in Montpelier, a truck driver near the New York border, a psychic claiming the children were in water. None led anywhere. On December 26th, Detective Sullivan returned to the Collins house with new information. "We've been looking at Michael's finances," he told Jennifer in the living room. "In the past 2 months, he withdrew $8,000 in cash from his savings account. 4 separate withdrawals, $2,000 each. October 15th, November 3rd, November 28th, and December 18th, 5 days before the children disappeared. Why would he do that? We don't know yet. When we asked him, he said it was for Christmas presents and paying down credit cards, but we can't find receipts for any major purchases, and his credit card balances haven't changed. In fact, they've stayed exactly the same. He's been making minimum payments while sitting on $8,000 in cash. That's not normal behavior." Sullivan paused. "There's something else. His brother Greg mentioned that Michael asked him about property in Montana back in October. Said he was interested in buying land out west, maybe building a cabin someday. Greg didn't think much of it at the time, but now—" "So you think he was planning something, planning to take them?" Sullivan chose his words carefully. "It's one possibility we're exploring. The problem is, we have no evidence he actually took the children. No one saw him in Burlington that evening. His brother confirmed he was at the apartment by 5:30. The timeline doesn't work." "Then he had help," Jennifer said. "Someone else took the kids while Michael established his alibi." That's another theory. But who? We've interviewed everyone Michael knows. Family, friends, co-workers. Nobody admits to helping him, and nobody's acting suspicious. The investigation ground forward through the last days of December. Police searched Michael's apartment and found nothing incriminating. They interviewed Emily's teacher, Ethan's daycare providers, the children's friends. Everyone described a normal, happy family going through a difficult divorce. No one had noticed anything unusual in the days before the disappearance. On December 29th, a hunter found a child's mitten near Lake Champlain's frozen shore, blue and green stripes, similar to Ethan's. Cadaver dogs searched the area. Divers went into the freezing water. They found nothing else. The dive was called off January 3rd when a blizzard made conditions too dangerous. The case was officially classified as endangered missing children on January 5th, 1990. As winter stretched into spring, volunteers returned to their lives. News cameras moved on. The tip line went silent. Michael moved to Portland, Maine in March. Detective Sullivan kept investigating between other cases, but leads evaporated. By the first anniversary, the case had gone cold. Jennifer divorced Michael in absentia in June 1991. She kept the house, unable to leave in case the children returned. She maintained their rooms exactly as they'd been, their unopened Christmas presents still in her closet. She returned to teaching, seeing her daughter's face in every brown-haired girl. Sullivan retired in 1997, giving Jennifer a box of case documents on his last day. She stored it in the basement unopened for 11 years. The world moved on. Y2K, September 11th. Wars. Children grew and had children. Emily would have been 21 in 2000. Ethan, 16. Jennifer marked these milestones alone. Then, on February 14, 2008, everything changed. Detective Brad Sullivan had been retired for 11 years, living in a small cabin on the shore of Lake Champlain and spending his days ice fishing and playing chess at the senior center. He'd worked dozens of cases during his career, but the Collins children haunted him still. He thought about them on Christmas Eve every year, wondered where they'd ended up, prayed they'd died quickly if they'd died at all. The phone call came at 7:45 p.m., just as Sullivan was pouring his evening bourbon. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, probably a telemarketer or political campaign, but something made him pick up. "Hello?" Silence on the other end. Then a woman's voice, shaking badly. "Is this Detective Sullivan? Brad Sullivan from Burlington?" "This is Brad Sullivan. I'm retired now. Who's calling?" "You don't know me. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm Michael Collins's younger sister." A long pause. "I need to tell you about Emily and Ethan." Sullivan's hand tightened around the phone. In his 63 years, he'd learned to recognize the sound of a confession coming, the particular quality of voice that meant someone was about to unburden themselves of a truth they'd carried too long. "I'm listening. They're alive. Emily and Ethan are alive. They've been alive this whole time." Margaret's voice broke. "Michael died last week. Cancer. He made me promise never to tell, but I can't. I can't keep doing this. Those children deserve to know the truth." Sullivan sat down heavily in his armchair, bourbon forgotten. "Where are they, Margaret?" "Montana, a town called Shelby, near the Canadian border. I've been raising them since December 1989. They know me as their mother. They think Jennifer died in a car accident when they were small." She started crying. "Please, you have to understand. Michael told me Jennifer was abusive. He said she was going to hurt them, that he had to get them away to protect them. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word." Sullivan was already reaching for a pen and paper. "Margaret, I need you to give me your address. Don't hang up. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to call the FBI right now, and they're going to want to talk to you. Do you understand? Yes, I want to talk to them. I want this to be over. By 9:30 p.m., FBI Special Agent Karen Reeves was on a plane from Boston to Montana. By midnight, Sullivan had reached Jennifer Collins at her home in Burlington. She'd answered the phone groggy with sleep, probably from the prescription medication he knew she took to get through the nights. When he told her the news, she'd made a sound he would remember for the rest of his life. Not quite a scream, not quite a sob, something wordless and animal and full of 19 years of grief suddenly cracking open. "They're alive," Sullivan repeated. "Emily and Ethan are alive. The FBI is bringing them home." The Montana operation moved fast. At 6:47 a.m. Mountain Time on February 15th, FBI agents knocked on Margaret's ranch house door. She answered in a bathrobe, face puffy from crying. She'd been waiting. The house was modest, but covered in photographs. 2 children growing up in snapshots. School photos, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. Recent photos showed adults. A young woman in graduation robes, a young man beside a pickup truck. Emily and Ethan, hidden 19 years. "Where are they now?" Agent Reeves asked. "Emily's at First Security Bank in Shelby. Ethan's at the Johansson Ranch, home for lunch around noon." Margaret looked at the photos. "They don't know anything's wrong. They think this is their life." At 11:52 a.m., Emily walked through the door in her bank uniform. She stopped seeing FBI agents. "What's going on?" Agent Reeves stepped forward. "Emily, I'm Karen Reeves, FBI. Your mother didn't die in a car accident. Her name is Jennifer Collins, and she's been looking for you 19 years. You and your brother were taken from Vermont when you were 10. Margaret isn't your aunt. She's been hiding you." Emily stared, then laughed nervously. "That's insane. My mom died when I was little. I've seen photos, Uncle Mike told me. The photos were fake. The stories were lies." Reeves showed 1989 school pictures. "This is you, Emily Marie Collins, age 10, Burlington, Vermont. This is Ethan David Collins, age 5. December 23, 1989. Your father arranged for Margaret to take you while he established an alibi." Emily looked at the photos. Her hands shook. "No, Margaret, tell them they're wrong." Margaret sat crying silently. "I'm so sorry, Emily. It's true. All of it." The sound Emily made was exactly like her mother's sound 18 hours earlier, wordless anguish of a world breaking. Ethan came home 20 minutes later, received the same news. His reaction was pure rage. He punched a wall, had to be restrained. Then he sat on the floor, head in hands. He lied. Uncle Mike lied about everything. The FBI arrested Margaret at 2:17 p.m. She'd packed a bag that morning, knowing this would come. She walked to the vehicle with her head down while neighbors watched, stunned. The reconstruction came through weeks of Margaret's testimony. She told investigators everything in a flat, exhausted voice. Michael had planned it for months after Jennifer filed for divorce. He withdrew cash carefully, researched Montana's lax ID requirements, reconnected with Margaret after years of silence. He spun her an elaborate lie. Jennifer was violent, unstable, abusive when drunk. The courts wouldn't believe him. He had evidence, all fabricated. Margaret, divorced and childless after a botched surgery, believed every word. On December 23rd, Michael came at 4 p.m. Jennifer left at 4:47. At 5:15, Michael walked the children out the back door to Margaret's rented Ford Taurus waiting in the alley. He told them it was a surprise Christmas adventure. He hugged them, then returned to stage the scene. Open windows, scattered footprints. By 5:35, he was at his brother's apartment, alibi established. Margaret drove through the night, heading west on I-90 with 2 sleeping children. When Ethan cried for his mother after the first day, Margaret stuck to Michael's script. "Your mother had an accident. She's very sick. We're keeping you safe." They reached Montana December 27th. Margaret rented a house in Shelby using fake ID, Margaret Brennan, documents for a deceased infant. She enrolled them in school in January 1990 as Sarah and Daniel Brennan. Montana asked few questions in those days. Michael visited every summer for exactly 1 week, staying at a Cutbank motel. He'd take them fishing, bring presents, give Margaret $2,000 in cash. He told beautiful lies about Jennifer, how much she'd loved them before the accident killed her. The children cried, and Michael held them, and Margaret watched with growing discomfort she learned to suppress. The lies calcified into truth. Emily and Ethan became Sarah and Daniel, children of a single mother. They made friends, went to dances, graduated. Emily was valedictorian in 2007. Ethan starred on the football team. Normal lives built on complete fiction. Michael's last visit was July 2007. He seemed different, quieter, emotional. He hugged them longer than usual. He told Margaret, "If anything happens to me, keep them safe. They can never know the truth. Promise me." She promised, as she'd been promising for 18 years. The pancreatic cancer killed him February 7th, 2008. A lawyer called Margaret mentioned Michael's final words. "Tell Emily and Ethan I'm sorry." That broke her. She'd told the children he died of a heart attack, but alone at night she thought about Jennifer Collins, the woman whose children she'd stolen, the woman she'd seen crying on television 19 years ago. She'd believed Jennifer was the monster. Michael was dead now. The spell was broken. She called Sullivan because she remembered his name from those news broadcasts, the detective who'd promised to find the children. Jennifer flew to Montana February 16th with FBI agents and a trauma counselor, Dr. Sarah Chen. The meeting happened at the FBI's Shelby office. Emily and Ethan sat hollow-eyed on a couch. Emily's hair was longer and darker. Ethan had his father's build, but Jennifer's hazel eyes she'd stared at in photographs for 19 years. Dr. Chen had warned her, "They don't remember you. They remember Margaret. You're a stranger. This will take time." "I'm your mother," Jennifer said. "My name is Jennifer Collins. You're Emily and Ethan. You were taken when you were 10 and 5. Emily's voice was sharp. "My name is Sarah Brennan. Our mother died in 1990. Jennifer pulled out photographs, told them specific memories. Emily eating pancake mix at age 3, becoming a Nancy Drew detective at 6, finding Mrs. Harrison's cat. Ethan's orange food phase, his nightly, "I love you bigger than the whole world." She showed them pictures of their house, their rooms, their old life. "I don't remember this," Ethan said, fists clenched. "Why don't I remember?" "You were so young," Dr. Chen said gently. "Trauma affects memory. Your father told you a story and you believed it." "So everything was a lie?" Ethan's voice rose. "Everything Margaret told us was bullshit?" "She loved you," Jennifer said carefully. "Whatever else she did wrong, she loved you. But yes, the story about me dying was a lie. Your father took you because he didn't want to lose custody." The meeting lasted 3 hours. Jennifer shared more memories, more photographs, tried to rebuild 19 lost years. Emily and Ethan listened, sometimes asking questions, sometimes sitting in silence. When it ended, Emily hugged Jennifer briefly, awkward, obligatory. Ethan shook her hand, face blank. As Jennifer walked to her car, she understood that finding her children and having them back were not the same thing. Margaret Collins faced federal charges: kidnapping, custodial interference, conspiracy. Her lawyer argued manipulation. She'd believed Michael's lies, thought she was protecting the children. The prosecutor countered, 19 years to come forward, only confessed after Michael's death. Emily and Ethan refused to testify against her. "She raised us," Emily told prosecutors. "She's the only mother we remember. You want us to help send her to prison?" The trial lasted 2 weeks in August 2008. The jury deliberated 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing in October, the judge acknowledged the complexity, but noted the severity. 19 years of anguish for Jennifer, the fundamental violation of kidnapping. Margaret Collins received 15 years in federal prison, eligible for parole after 10. Emily visited Margaret in prison once, 3 months after sentencing. She told Jennifer about it during one of their weekly phone calls. She said she was sorry, said she really believed, Michael, that you were dangerous. By the time she realized he'd lied, we were already in Montana, and it felt too late. "Do you believe that?" Jennifer asked. "I don't know what I believe. I'm angry at everyone." Emily's voice was tired. "The therapist says I need to grieve, like Sarah Brennan died and I have to mourn her before I can be Emily Collins. But how do you mourn yourself?" Ethan's recovery was different. He moved to Burlington in March 2008, took a job at a dairy farm, visited Jennifer twice weekly. He asked about his early childhood, the parts he couldn't remember. What books had she read him? What had been his favorite food? Had he really said, "I love you bigger than the whole world"? "Every single day," Jennifer told him. One evening in May, Ethan said suddenly, "I remembered something, a smell, chocolate chip cookies. I had this flash of memory, standing in a kitchen, watching someone take cookies out of the oven. Was that you? Every Sunday, you'd help measure ingredients. You always snuck chocolate chips from the bag." Jennifer's tears came. "You remember that?" "Just a flash. But yeah, the smell." Ethan took her hand. "You're a stranger, but you're also not. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." The healing was slow, incomplete, nothing like Jennifer's imagined reunions, but it was real. Emily moved to Boston for graduate school, social work, helping families stay together. She called Jennifer every Sunday. Small talk that gradually became more, building toward something that might look like a mother-daughter relationship. Ethan stayed in Vermont, met Claire at the Agricultural Extension Office. They married in 2011. Ethan asked Jennifer to walk him down the aisle. "You're my mom. It should be you." In 2013, Emily had a daughter. She named her Margaret Claire Collins. "I know it's complicated," Emily told Jennifer, "but Margaret raised me. She made huge, unforgivable mistakes, but she loved me. I can hold both truths. And Margaret is your middle name too, isn't it?" "It is," Jennifer said, crying. "It was my mother's name." "Then it's your granddaughter's name too." Detective Sullivan died in 2015, surrounded by family. Jennifer attended his funeral with Emily and Ethan, thanking his widow. "He never stopped looking. He gave me my family back." Margaret Collins was released in 2018 after 10 years, moved to Helena, Montana. Emily visited twice yearly. Ethan never did. The house on Maple Street still stands. Jennifer, now in her 70s, still teaches. Emily's room is for grandchildren visits. Ethan's room is an office, but one kitchen drawer holds things from December 1989, the Christmas presents never wrapped, the Nancy Drew book, the mittens with holes. She opens it on difficult days, remembering what it felt like to be 39 and certain her children were dead. The case officially closed in 2008, solved through confession rather than investigation. It's taught at the FBI Academy now, how determined perpetrators can hide victims in plain sight for decades. The lesson: sometimes children aren't dead. Sometimes they're alive, living under different names, believing a story that isn't true. On Christmas Eve 2024, 35 years after the disappearance, Jennifer sits at her kitchen table with both children, 3 grandchildren, and Ethan's wife, Claire. They're making chocolate chip cookies, Ethan's childhood favorite he's slowly remembering. The youngest grandchild, 4-year-old Lucas, climbs into Jennifer's lap. "I love you bigger than the whole world, Grandma," he says. Jennifer closes her eyes. 35 years of grief and searching and finding and healing compress into this single moment. Emily's daughter Margaret sets the table. Ethan mixes dough while his son helps measure. It's not the family she lost in 1989, not the reunion she dreamed of during 19 years of darkness, but it's real, it's here, and it's enough. "I love you bigger than the whole world, too," she whispers to Lucas, and means it with everything she has. Sullivan's hand tightened on the phone. 19 years of retirement evaporated in an instant, and he was back in that living room on Maple Street, watching Jennifer Collins fall apart on Christmas Eve. "Where are you calling from, Margaret?" "Montana, a town called Millwood, about 40 miles south of Missoula." Her voice cracked. "Michael died 6 days ago. Cancer. He made me promise never to tell, made me swear on everything holy, but I can't do this anymore. Those children deserve to know the truth." "What truth? Are Emily and Ethan alive?" "Yes." The word came out as a sob. "They're alive. They've been with me this whole time. Michael brought them to me on Christmas Eve, 1989, told me their mother had abandoned them, that she was mentally ill and dangerous, that if I didn't help him, he'd lose them to the state like we'd been lost. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word." Sullivan grabbed a pen with trembling hands and started writing on the back of an envelope. "I need you to stay on the line, Margaret. I'm going to conference in the FBI. Don't hang up. Wait, before you do that, you need to understand something." Margaret's voice steadied slightly, as if she'd been rehearsing this speech. "Emily and Ethan don't know they were kidnapped. They think their mother died in a car accident when they were children. They think I'm their aunt, who took them in out of kindness. They're not children anymore. Emily's 29, Ethan's 24. They have lives here, jobs, friends. Emily's engaged to be married. If you come in with sirens and badges, you'll destroy them. They were stolen from their mother, Margaret. She spent 19 years not knowing if they were dead or alive. Whatever lives they've built in Montana are based on a lie. I know that. But they're still people, still human beings who've done nothing wrong. Promise me you'll be gentle with them. Please." Sullivan closed his eyes. In his career, he'd delivered death notifications to dozens of families. He'd told parents their children had drowned, been murdered, overdosed, died in car accidents. But this, telling adults they'd been kidnapped as children, that everything they knew about their past was a fabrication, he had no training for that kind of devastation. "I promise we'll be as careful as possible," he said. "But Margaret, you need to tell me everything, from the beginning. How did Michael do this?" The story that emerged over the next hour was almost impossibly audacious in its simplicity. Michael had been planning the kidnapping for months, since the day Jennifer filed for divorce in June 1989. He'd contacted Margaret, his younger sister by 8 years, who he'd been separated from when they entered foster care and hadn't seen in over a decade, and spun an elaborate fiction. Jennifer was mentally unstable, he told Margaret. She was planning to take the children and disappear, or worse, hurt them. The custody evaluator was biased against fathers. He would lose Emily and Ethan unless he acted first. Margaret, 30 years old and living alone on a inherited property in rural Montana, had believed him. She'd never married, never had children of her own. The idea of helping her brother save his kids from a dangerous mother appealed to something deep in her. Maybe the fantasy of the family she'd never had. Maybe the chance to be a hero in a story where she'd always been a victim. Michael had sent her $2,000 in October to prepare the property, buy beds, clothes, toys, everything two children would need. Another $2,000 in November for legal fees if questions arose. Two more thousand in December for immediate expenses and food. Then, on December 23, 1989, while Jennifer was Christmas shopping, Michael had walked Emily and Ethan out the back door of their house. He'd told them they were going on an adventure, a special trip to surprise their mother. The children, trusting their father completely, had followed him to a rental car parked in the alley, a blue Toyota Corolla that Michael had paid for in cash, using a fake name. "He drove them to my place," Margaret said, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "It took 3 days. He'd packed clothes, their favorite toys, even Ethan's stuffed rabbit that he couldn't sleep without. When they got here, he told them their mother had been in a terrible car accident, that she'd died instantly and hadn't suffered. Emily cried for 2 weeks straight. Ethan stopped talking for almost a month. And I comforted them, held them, told them they'd be safe with me. I thought I was helping them heal." "When did you realize Michael had lied?" "Not for years. Michael stayed for 3 weeks after he brought them, making sure they were adjusting. Then he went back to Vermont and started his new life in Portland. He called every week at first, then every month. He'd come visit twice a year. The kids adored him. He was the fun uncle who brought presents and took them camping. I was the steady one, the one who made them do homework and go to bed on time." Margaret's voice turned bitter. "I didn't figure it out until 1996. Emily was 17 and wanted to get her driver's license. She needed a birth certificate, but all I had were photocopies Michael had given me with slightly wrong information. Jennifer's maiden name spelled wrong, a birth date off by 2 years. I requested official copies from Vermont, and when they arrived, they didn't match. That's when I started asking questions." "What did Michael say when you confronted him?" "He admitted everything, said it was too late to go back, that the children were happy and healthy and loved. He said if I turned him in, I'd go to prison too for kidnapping and harboring fugitives. He said Emily and Ethan would hate me forever for destroying the only family they'd ever known. And he was right. I am guilty. I've been guilty for 19 years. Sullivan could hear her crying now, harsh sobs that made her words almost unintelligible. He waited, letting her compose herself, his own mind racing through the logistics of what came next. He'd need the FBI's child abduction rapid deployment team, even though the children weren't children anymore. He'd need counselors, victim advocates, someone from the Vermont State Police. And he'd need to call Jennifer Collins and tell her that her children were alive. "Margaret," he said carefully, "I need names. What are Emily and Ethan being called now?" "Sarah and Daniel Mitchell. Michael had fake documents made, Social Security cards, immunization records, school transcripts. They've lived as Sarah and Daniel their whole lives here. They don't even remember their real names. Emily, Sarah. She sometimes has nightmares about a brown-haired woman calling for her, but she thinks it's just her brain creating false memories of her mother." "Do they have any contact with the outside world? Internet, phone?" "Of course. Sarah's a nurse at Millwood Community Hospital. Daniel works at a ranch about 20 miles north of town. They're normal people with normal lives. That's what makes this so horrible. They're innocent in all of this, and learning the truth will destroy them." Sullivan ended the call 40 minutes later with Margaret's full address, promises of cooperation, and a commitment that she'd be available for arrest when the FBI arrived. Then he sat in his cabin for a long time, watching darkness settle over Lake Champlain, before he picked up the phone again and dialed a number he'd kept in his wallet for 19 years. Jennifer Collins answered on the third ring. "Hello? Jennifer, this is Brad Sullivan. from the Burlington Police Department. A sharp intake of breath. What's wrong? Did you find them? Are they... She couldn't say the word dead. They're alive, Jennifer. Emily and Ethan are alive. The sound she made wasn't quite a scream and wasn't quite a sob. Sullivan heard something crash in the background, maybe a glass or plate hitting the floor. Then silence so complete he thought she'd fainted, until finally her voice came back, barely a whisper. Where? Montana, a town called Millwood. Michael took them there in 1989, and they've been living with his sister ever since. They're using different names, but they're alive and healthy. The FBI is coordinating with local law enforcement right now. They'll be contacting Emily and Ethan tomorrow. Tomorrow? I want to see them now. I want to go there right now. Jennifer, you need to understand. This is going to be complicated. Emily and Ethan don't remember being kidnapped. They were told you died when they were children. They've built entire lives based on that lie. When they find out the truth tomorrow, it's going to be traumatic. The FBI has counselors who specialize in this kind of situation, but you need to prepare yourself. They might not react the way you hope. I don't care how they react. They're my children. I've been dead for 19 years, and now I get to come back to life. When can I see them? Sullivan closed his eyes. Let's take it one step at a time. The FBI arrived in Millwood, Montana at 6 a.m. on February 15, 2008. Special Agent Lisa Chen led a team of 4 agents, along with 2 counselors from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and a Victim Services Coordinator. Margaret Collins met them at the small ranch house where she'd raised Michael's children, her face gray with exhaustion and guilt. She'd been awake all night, she said, sitting in the living room and looking at photographs of Sarah and Daniel, Emily and Ethan, and trying to find the right words for an apology that could never be sufficient. Sarah's at work, Margaret told Agent Chen. She does 3 12-hour shifts a week at the hospital. Yesterday, today, tomorrow. She'll be home around 8 tonight. Daniel's at the Rocking M Ranch. He usually gets home around 6. We'll need to speak with them separately, Chen said. Do you have contact information for both? Margaret provided phone numbers, work addresses, a recent photograph that showed a smiling young woman with long brown hair and green eyes standing next to a tall young man with blonde hair and a rancher's tan. They looked happy, healthy, completely unaware that their entire existence was about to implode. Agent Chen made the decision to start with Daniel, Ethan, since he'd been younger when taken and might have fewer actual memories of Vermont. The team drove to the Rocking M Ranch at 10:30 a.m. and asked the foreman to call Daniel in from the pasture where he was mending fence line. They met in the ranch office, a small room that smelled of leather and coffee, and Chen watched Daniel's, Ethan's, face cycle through confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally a kind of numb shock as she told him the story of his real childhood. That's impossible, he said when she finished. Aunt Margaret wouldn't. My dad wouldn't. This is insane. You've got the wrong people. Chen placed 2 photographs on the desk. The first showed a blond 5-year-old boy in a dinosaur t-shirt, grinning at the camera with missing front teeth. The second showed that same boy's age-progressed image created by forensic artists in 2005, projecting what Ethan Collins would look like at age 20. The resemblance to the young man sitting across from her was undeniable. We can confirm identity with DNA testing, Chen said gently. But Daniel, Ethan, I think you already know this is true. I think part of you has always known something wasn't quite right. His hands were shaking. My mother died in a car accident when I was 5. I don't remember much about her, but I remember my dad telling me. He stopped. That was a lie? All of it? All of it. Your mother's name is Jennifer Collins. She lives in Burlington, Vermont, in the same house you lived in as a child. She's been searching for you for 19 years. Ethan, he couldn't think of himself as Daniel anymore, not with the truth sitting in front of him like a physical weight, put his head in his hands. Sarah? Does she know? Does she? Jesus, Sarah, this is going to kill her. They found Emily at Millwood Community Hospital, just finishing up her shift in the emergency department. Agent Chen pulled her into a private consultation room and delivered the news as gently as possible. Emily's reaction was different from her brother's, not shock, but immediate denial, articulate and forceful. "I would remember being kidnapped," she insisted. "I was 10 years old. You don't forget something like that." "You weren't violently abducted by a stranger," Chen explained. "Your father, a person you trusted completely, told you that you were going on a trip. By the time you arrived in Montana and learned your mother had supposedly died, you'd been displaced from everything familiar. Children that age are incredibly resilient, but also incredibly vulnerable to adults they trust. Your father and Margaret convinced you of a new reality, and your brain accepted it as truth." Emily's face had gone very pale. "I want to see proof. Birth certificates, photographs, DNA, everything. Because if this is real, if my entire life has been a lie, then I need to know exactly what was taken from me." Over the next 6 hours, both Emily and Ethan, the names they'd been born with, felt foreign and wrong, but Sarah and Daniel felt like lies, were shown documentation of their former lives. School photos from Burlington, medical records, birthday party pictures, a videotape from Emily's 8th birthday where Jennifer sang to her daughter while a younger Ethan clapped his hands with chocolate cake on his face. And finally, the missing persons reports filed on December 23, 1989, with quotes from Jennifer describing her children. Emily's love of Nancy Drew books, Ethan's stuffed rabbit named Hopper, the secret phrase, "I love you bigger than the whole world." When Ethan heard that phrase, he broke, because he remembered it. Not clearly, not with sharp detail, but as a sense memory, someone saying those words while holding him close, a feeling of complete safety and love that he'd always attributed to Margaret, but which now felt like a ghost from another life. "I want to talk to her," he said finally. "My mother. I need to hear her voice." Jennifer Collins had been sitting by her phone for 26 hours straight when it rang at 4:15 p.m. on February 15th. She grabbed it before the first ring finished. "Mrs. Collins, this is Agent Chen with the FBI. I have someone who wants to speak with you." A pause, then a young man's voice, tentative and raw. "Is this Jennifer?" She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. That voice, deeper now, adult, but with an inflection she recognized from the 5-year-old who used to narrate his entire day while playing with toy trucks. "Yes," she finally managed. "This is Jennifer. This is your mother. I'm sorry. I don't remember you. They told me you died when I was little, but Agent Chen showed me photos, and I think there's something about your voice that feels—" He stopped, gathering himself. "I don't know what to call you. Jennifer? Mom? I'm sorry, this is all really confusing." "You can call me whatever feels right," Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face. "You can call me Jennifer if that's easier. I just want to hear you talk. I've imagined your voice for so long, and now I get to actually hear it. And you're real. You're alive. You're—" She was sobbing now, unable to form coherent words. "I'm sorry," Ethan said again. "I'm sorry you went through that. I'm sorry I don't remember you. Agent Chen says there's going to be a lot of investigation and legal stuff, but after that, maybe we could meet, if you want to?" "I want to, more than anything in the world. I want to see you and your sister, and is she okay?" Is Emily okay? She's angry, really angry. She's talking to her own agent right now. She wants answers about why and how, and she wants them immediately. That's how she is. My sister. She's always been the one who needs to understand everything before she can accept it. He paused. That's weird. Calling her my sister. I've always called her my sister, but now it means something different. It means we shared a mother and a father and a house and a life I don't remember. They talked for 43 minutes. Jennifer asked careful questions about his life. What he did for work, if he was happy, what his favorite foods were, avoiding anything that might sound like accusation or grief. Ethan told her about the ranch, about learning to ride horses when he was 8, about his girlfriend Melissa, who worked at the feed store in town. He sounded like a stranger, but underneath the stranger's voice, Jennifer could hear echoes of her son. The way he paused before answering questions, thinking through his words. The slight laugh when he said something he found amusing. Small ghosts of the child she'd lost. When they finally hung up, Jennifer sat in her kitchen and cried until she had nothing left. Barbara Harrison, who'd been waiting in the living room, brought her water and tissues and sat beside her without saying anything. There were no words adequate for this situation. Joy and grief so tangled together they became indistinguishable. Emily's call came 3 hours later. Unlike Ethan's tentative tone, Emily's voice was controlled, almost clinical. Jennifer, this is Emily Collins, or Sarah Mitchell. I'm not sure which name to use. Emily is fine, Jennifer said. That's what I named you. That's who you are. I'm 29 years old, and I've been Sarah Mitchell for 19 of those years. I'm not sure it's that simple. Emily's voice softened slightly. I'm not trying to be cruel. I just need you to understand that this is... I don't know how to process this. I'm angry at my father, or the man I thought was my uncle, or whoever he actually was. I'm angry at Margaret. I'm angry at myself for not remembering you. And I don't know what I'm supposed to feel about you. You don't have to feel anything, Jennifer said. You don't owe me anything. I know I'm a stranger to you. But I've loved you every single day for 19 years. I've celebrated your birthdays alone. I've bought you Christmas presents I never got to give you. I've held on to every photograph, every drawing you made in kindergarten, every report card. You were stolen from me, Emily, and I know that's not your fault, but it's also not mine. We're both victims of what your father did. He was dying. Did they tell you that? Michael, my dad, Uncle Michael, whatever? He had pancreatic cancer. It was everywhere. The doctors gave him 3 months, and he lasted 6 weeks. At the end, he was delirious from the pain medication. He kept talking about Vermont, about snow, about a house with Christmas lights. I thought he was just confused. Now I know he was remembering when he destroyed our lives. Did he ever apologize? Did he ever show remorse? He told Margaret to call you. That was his version of remorse, I guess, making sure we'd eventually find out the truth. Emily's voice broke for the first time. I have a wedding planned for June. I'm supposed to marry a man who knows me as Sarah Mitchell, whose family knows me as Sarah Mitchell. How do I tell them that none of that is real? How do I stand in a church and promise forever when I don't even know who I am? Jennifer wished she could reach through the phone and hold her daughter the way she used to when Emily had nightmares as a child. You're exactly who you've always been. Your name might change, your history might change, but you're still you. You're still the girl who loves mysteries and becomes passionate about things and needs to understand the truth before you can move forward. Those things don't change just because you learned terrible information. They talked for over an hour. By the end, Emily's voice had lost some of its defensive edge. She wasn't ready to call Jennifer Mom, might never be ready, but she agreed to meet in person once the initial investigation was complete. The FBI would need statements from everyone involved. Margaret Collins would be arrested and charged with custodial interference, kidnapping, and conspiracy. Michael Collins, conveniently dead, would escape justice except for the posthumous destruction of his reputation. The arrest of Margaret Collins on February 16, 2008, made national news. CNN ran the story with childhood photos of Emily and Ethan next to recent pictures of Sarah and Daniel. The headline read, "Brother and Sister Found Alive 19 Years After Christmas Eve Disappearance." News vans descended on Burlington and Millwood simultaneously, broadcasting from outside Jennifer's house and the ranch where the Collins children had been hidden in plain sight. Margaret's arraignment was brief. She pleaded guilty to all charges, waiving her right to trial. In her statement to the court, she said simply, "I thought I was saving children from a bad situation. I was wrong. I stole 19 years from a mother who loved her children, and I can never give those years back. Whatever punishment this court decides is appropriate, I accept." The judge sentenced her to 15 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 8 years. It was a harsh sentence for a woman with no prior criminal record, but the judge noted that Margaret had made a choice every single day for 19 years to continue the lie. She'd had countless opportunities to come forward and had only done so when her brother's death made keeping the secret too psychologically difficult. In Millwood, the scandal consumed the small town. Emily's co-workers at the hospital couldn't reconcile the competent, caring nurse they knew with the national news story about a kidnapped child living under false identity. Daniel's friends at the ranch struggled to understand how someone they'd known for almost 2 decades could be anyone other than who they claimed. Emily's fiancé, a high school teacher named Mark Davidson, broke off their engagement 3 weeks after the truth came out. He told her he still loved her, but he couldn't marry someone whose entire identity had been fabricated. The woman he'd proposed to was named Sarah Mitchell, and that person no longer existed. The first face-to-face meeting between Jennifer, Emily, and Ethan took place on March 8, 2008, in a conference room at the FBI field office in Burlington. Counselors and victim advocates stood by, ready to intervene if emotions escalated beyond control. Jennifer arrived an hour early, too nervous to wait at home. She'd changed clothes 3 times, unable to decide what a mother should wear when meeting the children who'd been stolen from her almost 2 decades ago. Emily and Ethan arrived together, having flown from Montana to Vermont the previous day. When they walked into the conference room, Jennifer stood frozen. Her babies had become strangers, tall, adult, with faces she'd tried to imagine for 19 years, but which didn't match her projections at all. Emily had Jennifer's cheekbones and her own father's eyes. Ethan had grown into his features, the chubby toddler face replaced by a rancher's weathered complexion. "Hi," Jennifer said, and then couldn't think of anything else to say. "How do you condense 19 years of grief and love and hope into a greeting?" Emily spoke first. "You look like the woman in my nightmares." "I don't mean that in a cruel way. I mean literally. I've had dreams for years about a brown-haired woman calling my name, and you're her. I always thought my brain was creating false memories of my mother, but they were real memories trying to surface." "You were Emily then," Jennifer said carefully. "You can be Emily again if you want. Or you can stay Sarah. I won't force anything on you." "I want my real name back," Emily said fiercely. "I want everything that was taken from me. My name, my history, my mother. I've spent 3 weeks being angry, and now I just want to stop being Sarah Mitchell and start being Emily Collins again." Ethan was quieter. He hugged Jennifer briefly, awkwardly, then stepped back and shoved his hands in his pockets. "I don't remember much from before," he admitted. "Just fragments, a brown house, snow, someone singing. but I want to remember. Can you? Would you tell me about when I was little? What I was like?" They spent 4 hours in that conference room. Jennifer told stories. Ethan's obsession with toy trucks, Emily's attempts to adopt every stray cat in the neighborhood, the time they'd built a snowman so large it didn't melt until April, Christmas mornings and birthday parties and ordinary weekday dinners. Emily and Ethan listened like students in a class about their own lives, absorbing information that should have been instinctive but felt like studying history. Slowly, tentatively, connections began forming. Emily recognized Jennifer's laugh, not consciously, but in a deep, primal way that made her start crying without understanding why. Ethan heard Jennifer say the phrase, "I love you bigger than the whole world," and felt something unlock in his chest, a door to a room in his memory he didn't know existed. It wasn't a Disney reunion. There were long silences, uncomfortable moments when nobody knew what to say, times when the weight of 19 lost years sat heavy in the room. But by the end, when Emily and Ethan stood to leave, Emily reached out and squeezed Jennifer's hand. "Can we do this again?" she asked. "Tomorrow? I know you're not my mom in the way you used to be, but maybe you could be my mom in a new way, if that makes sense." "That makes perfect sense," Jennifer said. The weeks that followed were complicated. Emily and Ethan, both struggling to respond to names they'd forgotten, stayed in Vermont while FBI investigators built a case documenting every detail of Michael Collins's crime. They lived in a hotel in Burlington, not ready to move into the house on Maple Street where their childhood memories had been erased, but visiting daily. Jennifer took them through the house room by room, showing them the spaces they'd once occupied. Emily's room was exactly as it had been the day she disappeared. Jennifer had turned it into a shrine, unable to change anything. The Nancy Drew books stood on the shelf. The bed was made with the same purple comforter. Even the hair ties Emily had left on her dresser remained untouched. "This feels like visiting a museum of someone else's childhood," Emily said, touching the books with tentative fingers. But then she picked up a small wooden box from the dresser and opened it, finding a collection of friendship bracelets inside. Something flickered in her eyes, not quite memory, but recognition. "I made these," she said with certainty. "I remember making these." Ethan's room was harder. He'd been so young when taken that he had almost no concrete memories. But when Jennifer showed him a stuffed rabbit named Hopper, worn from years of being loved, he held it and felt tears start. "I remember him," he whispered. "I remember sleeping with him every night. What happened to him? Why didn't I have him in Montana?" "Your father must have left him behind," Jennifer said gently. "He couldn't take everything without raising suspicion." "So Hopper just sat here for 19 years waiting for me?" Ethan clutched the rabbit tighter. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." DNA testing officially confirmed their identities on March 20th, 2008, though everyone had known the truth long before. Emily and Ethan Collins were legally declared alive and restored to their birth identities. The bureaucratic process of undoing Sarah and Daniel Mitchell, canceling Social Security numbers, explaining to credit bureaus that these identities were fraudulent, closing bank accounts opened under false pretenses, took months. Emily decided to stay in Vermont. She'd lost her fiancé, lost the respect of her community in Montana, lost any sense of who Sarah Mitchell had been. Starting over in Burlington meant she could be Emily Collins without the shadow of her stolen identity hanging over every interaction. She got a job at the University of Vermont Medical Center and rented an apartment 3 blocks from Jennifer's house. Mother and daughter had dinner together twice a week, slowly rebuilding a relationship that had been severed 19 years ago. Ethan went back to Montana after 6 weeks. He told Jennifer he needed time to process everything, to figure out how to integrate Emily Collins's childhood memories with Daniel Mitchell's adult experiences. But he called every Sunday, long conversations where they talked about everything and nothing. He'd started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma, working through the psychological damage of learning your entire childhood was a lie. The media eventually moved on to other stories. By summer 2008, the Collins case had faded from headlines, replaced by election coverage and economic collapse. But for Jennifer, Emily, and Ethan, the aftermath stretched on indefinitely. They'd been given back to each other, but the 19 years that had been stolen couldn't be recovered. Emily would never get her teenage years with her mother. Ethan would never have memories of growing up in Vermont. Jennifer would never know her children's middle school graduations, their proms, their first heartbreaks. What they had instead was complicated and messy and real. Emily introduced Jennifer to her new boyfriend in December 2008, a teacher at a local high school who knew her full history and loved her anyway. Jennifer went to Ethan's wedding in Montana in 2010, meeting the girlfriend, now wife, who'd stood by him through the revelation of his true identity. In 2012, Emily had a daughter and named her Jennifer Margaret, honoring both her mother and the complicated woman who'd raised her, who was serving her sentence in federal prison and writing letters to Emily every month, begging forgiveness. On Christmas Eve 2014, 25 years after Emily and Ethan disappeared, Jennifer hosted dinner at the house on Maple Street. Emily came with her husband and 3-year-old daughter. Ethan flew in from Montana with his wife and newborn son. They decorated a tree together, cooked turkey together, opened presents in the living room where Jennifer had once sat alone, year after year, wondering if her children were alive. It wasn't the Christmas Jennifer had imagined 19 years ago. Her children weren't children anymore. They called her Jennifer as often as they called her Mom. The years that Michael had stolen could never be reclaimed, but they were together, alive, building something new from the broken pieces of what had been destroyed. Emily found Jennifer in the kitchen after dinner, washing dishes while the others watched a movie in the living room. She picked up a towel and started drying, working in comfortable silence for a few minutes before she spoke. "I've been thinking about something," Emily said. "When I was little, when I was Emily the first time, did I ever tell you that I loved you?" "Every day," Jennifer said. "Usually multiple times a day. You were very affectionate." "I don't remember that. I don't remember a lot of things from before, but I want you to know." Emily set down the dish she was drying and turned to face her mother. "I love you. Not because I remember loving you as a child, not because I'm supposed to, but because over the past 6 years you've been patient and kind and present, and you've let me figure out who Emily Collins is without forcing me to be someone I'm not. So I love you. And I wanted to make sure you heard that." Jennifer pulled her daughter into a hug, holding her the way she'd dreamed of holding her for 19 years. Outside, snow was falling on Maple Street, covering Burlington in white. Inside, her grandchildren laughed at something on television. Her son called from the living room asking if there was any pie left. Her family, broken and rebuilt and imperfect and real, was home for Christmas. It wasn't the ending anyone would have written, but it was the ending they got, and in its own complicated way, it was enough.